Hi, I'm Emily Muhlstein, and this is a scoping presentation for the proposed for-hire Days at Sea pilot program. Despite annual increases in the recreational red snapper quota, the season has become progressively shorter each year since 1996. Now, this has negatively impacted both private and for-hire components of the recreational sector. Specifically, for-hire vessels are experiencing disruptions in booking clients, diminishing profits, and a decrease in the number of permits that exist. In this presentation, I'm going to go over the purpose and need, some of the potential management actions that need to be considered, some issues that need to be dealt with, and I'm going to ask some additional questions for you to consider when you're composing your public comment. So creation of a pilot Days at Sea program would be to evaluate the feasibility of a Days at Sea program for application in the for-hire part of the recreational sector. The program would increase flexibility in trip scheduling, and it would also improve economic profitability for the for-hire sector. This is a list of potential management actions that will have to be considered for the implementation of a pilot program. I'm going to go through each one of them and highlight some of the issues involved and also ask some questions. So there's currently 1,299 charter boats with active or renewable for-hire refish permits in the Gulf of Mexico. Participation in the pilot program should be voluntary, it should be geographically representative, and it should represent the range of vessel characteristics such as size. Also, a control group would be selected to improve program evaluation. The pilot program is expected to have some sort of expiration date or a limited duration. So the question is whether or not a single or multi-use program should be used. If a multi-year program is used, it could result in more reliable data because captains in the program would have time to adapt to the new regulations. Also, multi-year program could allow for more charter boats to participate in the pilot program. Potentially, the control group in the first half could switch midway through and then become part of the program, and that would double your participation. Measurement of effort for a Days at Sea could be in calendar days, in trips, or as angler trips. If calendar days are selected, operators would then be able to make multiple trips per calendar day. If trips are selected, that would be easier to enforce, but it would not take into account vessel capacity. If angler trips are used, that would account for vessel capacity and also for multiple trips taken in a day, but it would be much harder to enforce. So apportionment of quota for the pilot program requires two separate decisions. First would be the amount of recreational quota that is allotted to the pilot program, and second would be the division of the allotted quota amongst program participants. So starting with that first part, implementation of a pilot program would require that a percentage of the recreational quota be allotted to the program. So some of the questions here are, should the average portion of the recreational red snapper quota that's been harvested by charter operators then be prorated by the percentage of charter vessels that are participating in the pilot program to determine the amount of recreational quota to set aside for the pilot program? What time series should be used to determine that average harvest? And finally, should regional differences in red snapper landings be taken into account? The second part is the division of the allotted quota amongst program participants. The questions here are, should the Days at Sea be distributed equally among participants, or should Days at Sea be based on reported logbooks? It's important to note that using reported logbooks would benefit participants from the logbook pilot program, but it would exclude interested captains that didn't participate in that program. Moving on to seasonal restrictions on use. So Days at Sea usage could be limited to specific time periods. Enforcement of Days at Sea may become an issue during regular red snapper season. Should the program be year-round? And should the days overlap with regular red snapper season? Keep in mind, for a multi-year pilot program, restrictions on the Days at Sea usage could be adjusted on an annual basis. Provisions for transferability. So the program could allow that days at sea be transferable between members of the pilot study. Should days at sea be transferable? That could increase the flexibility of the program. It could also cause windfall profits for certain operators. It would allow performance evaluation of the days at sea markets, and it would also require ownership caps. Should the days at sea be non-transferable? That would simplify the program and is also expected to be less efficient. Enforcement of the pilot program would include features typically used for enforcement in the commercial individual fishing quota programs. There would be a hail-in and hail-out requirement. Boats would have to land at approved landing sites, and they would have to be equipped with vessel monitoring systems. Also, consequences for program violations would need to be determined. Validation of catch and effort. So a pilot days at sea program would require an electronic data reporting system and also in-person sampling to validate reporting. Electronic reporting would have to be completed prior to landing, and then in-person sampling would be proportionally weighted based on the number of participating vessels at a certain site. Also, on selected sites, it would be important to interview all returning vessels. Also, in-person sampling would have to directly observe harvest for comparison with reported catch. And vessel operators would have to be interviewed for their effort data. Evaluation criteria for the program would have to be determined before the program was implemented. Necessary data would have to be collected from all participants, including the control group. Evaluation should measure program performance, and it should also identify underperforming areas and suggest future directions and modifications to the program. The Council could use the program evaluation to determine whether or not to implement a Gulf-wide days at sea program or to extend or terminate the pilot program. There are some issues that will have to be considered before a days at sea pilot program is implemented. Allocation decisions will need to be made in order to move forward with the pilot program. Council will have to define intent relative to sector separation, and the voluntary nature of the program will limit ability to make inferences about the entire fleet. So I have some additional questions I'd like to consider while you're composing your public comment. First, are you in favor of a days at sea program? Would you volunteer to participate in a pilot program? What is the minimum number of days at sea you would accept to participate in a program, assuming that we're going by a 27-day regular recreational red snapper season? Are there any specific issues that stop you from supporting a pilot program? What positive or negative outcomes do you expect from the program? And are there alternative management measures that you would prefer to a days at sea pilot program? You can read the full document by following this link, and then you can click on this link, which will bring you to our online comment form. Please submit those comments by April 8th, 2013. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact us at golfcouncil@golfcouncil.org. Thanks for taking the time to watch this presentation and to submit your comment to us.